When it comes to chicken, I'm your guy.
Blinking.
I'll have what Joseph has.
Look, somebody's talking about you.
This is what we call the voice of God.
Popping.
Everybody just gets to focus on you.
Grab me.
Probably not the best thing for an introvert.
I'm asking for you.
Well, I like a good chicken sandwich.
Touch me. Hi, David. Comment.
Oh my God.
Like.
You're actually an identical twin.
Push.
Maybe I'll just ask Julie to talk about what it is to be
No.
an identical twin.
Pick me up.
No, you didn't.
Shouting.
Surprise! Jeremiah, just hang on a second. I just got a text.
There's an edit for your new opening, Joseph.
I feel really honored to have been here, man.
By the way, you've done a masterful job. Seriously.
It was such a joy.
Thanks, Joseph. It's an honor.
Good on you. This was a pleasure.
I mean, you are the prime example of how to pivot in this new environment.
I wish everybody gets an opportunity to interact with Joseph Jaffe and Corona TV.
Who needs Cameo when I've got my own personal Cameo? Well, hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, October 14th, and it is time for Corona TV. You're going to feel like you're at the beach today because you're going to be surrounded by shells, and it's just peaceful. I mean, who doesn't want to be surrounded by shells? And look, this show is inclusive. This show does not discriminate. The show does not discriminate against bald people because today is the Bald and Be Free Day. It's Be Bald and Free, or Be Bald and Be Free Day. It is a day to celebrate your wonderful baldness. I don't know if Chip is watching, but I hope he is. You know, I decided to even get in on the act. So what do you think of the new me? Do you like it? Do you like me? Do I wear bald well? I'm pretty sure that this is an app that I'm not going to renew my temporary subscription, but it didn't look as bad as I thought. I think I do need a little bit of facial hair maybe in order to promote the baldness. Yaku, who is bald, is watching, and he said, bald is timeless fashion. So there you go. Enough of me attempting to be bald. I'm going to hold on to my hair for a little bit longer. But yeah, so we are continuing to be an experiment and enjoy some of the smartest minds in marketing on this planet. We continue to partner with the ANA, and today is no exception. I mean, I can't even begin to articulate the incredible insights that have come, real insights, not fake insights, that have come out of all of these interviews. But today I have the pleasure of Ferdinand Jesus Velasquez, Aragon. Just call me Dean Aragon, who is the CEO of Shell Brands International, Global Vice President of Brand. He is in the studio with me, and we have been getting to know each other a little bit in the green room, and it's just going to be a terrific conversation. As always, if you'd like to win a complimentary pass to this phenomenal Masters of Marketing conference, all you got to do is subscribe to the show, bit.ly/CoronaTV subscribe, or you can text the word Corona TV to 66866 if you're in North America, or go to josephjaffe.com/subscribe. Not many Facebook birthdays today. So Hugh MacLeod, the original Hugh MacLeod, his drawings, his cartoons, his work is just tremendous. Greg Bortz, happy birthday to you. A lot more people in LinkedIn land, Scott Kidder, Sandal Maloon, Sedan Singh, Raul Vera, happy birthday to all of you, and have a great day. You know, you may be stuck at home, and hopefully you're not stuck in general, because this has been a tough time for us from a physical health and mental health standpoint. Just know that we are with you, and we celebrate with you, and we celebrate you as well. Well, today's seated soliloquy I'm calling Echo Chamber, and it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different in the sense that it draws on something that I spoke about yesterday on my Facebook, and you know, it came with a realization that I actually don't have a lot of pro-Trump friends left on my Facebook. Well, how do I know this? Well, I've hit my 5,000 friend, note the air quotes please, max. And so on any given day, I can actually see if I've lost a friend or if I've been unfriended. Now, typically after I say something that is partisan, polarizing, or quite frankly, just logical, I expect to see the unsubscribe. Those that are left are probably genuine friends, and hopefully real friendship will never be compromised or sacrificed at the expense of a narcissistic megalomaniac who clearly has had his brain rotted by the toxins from all of his orange tints makeup and self-tanning. Hold on a second. See what I just did there? I just fell back into my old polarizing bad ways and bad habits. I further alienated people. My bad. Look, the shame is that what suffers is meaningful dialogue. Every day I'm just surrounded by more and more people just like me, my tribe. But we just end up reinforcing the same worldview. We just end up navel gazing. What is the sound of one hand clapping? In Join the Conversation, which is the second book that I wrote, I defined conversation as being between two or more sides, not two or more people. But what we have left, sadly, in our society is just a bunch of sheep, lemmings, take your pick, of which I guess I am one too. Now, by means of update, I wrote this yesterday, the post and the soliloquy, but this morning I noticed that I had 4,999 friends. It's cool. I have a waiting list. So welcome to the one-sided party, John Burkhart, who, by the way, will be my guest on Corona TV, October 30th. The more important question is this: to what extent are you actively pursuing dissenting, diverse, and differing perspectives in every aspect of your lives? To what extent do you look for truth in every statement, every point of view, every opinion, especially from people that are different from you? You don't need me to tell you this, but if we are ever to come together and be united, we have to find common ground. And the day that it is impossible to find any common ground, well, that day will be a sad and indeed a tragic day. So let's try and avoid that, shall we? Well, now it's time to bring on my guest. And as always, I get to share with you some words about him to give you a sense as to who he is and what he's accomplished. So in a career spanning 32 years, and it's weird because he looks like he's 31, Dean Aragon refers to himself simply as the brand guy. Dean is currently Global Vice President for Brand for the entire Shell Group, responsible for crafting and executing overall brand strategy. He has redefined the Shell brand purpose towards enabling human progress via more and cleaner energy solutions. He passionately advocates for B2H. I have to ask him about that, business to human principles. Dean is married to Jane. They have 5 children, Christina, Miguel, Inez, Lorenzo, and Diego. And he joins me today, if memory serves, from Switzerland, from Zurich. Welcome to the show, Dean.
Hey, Joseph. Good evening. Good evening from Zurich.
Yeah,
Thanks
so you are a world traveler. It's actually kind of amazing because when I was finding out about you, I still don't even know how this is true. Your wife and kids and yourself are split between 3 countries. How do you even achieve that?
Well, I have a lot of kids. that sort of helps, and then 3 of them are adults. So 2 of them have their lives in London, my 2 daughters, and I have a son in Boston in university, and I have 2 teenage boys with me here in Zurich with my wife.
Wow. So I know that one of the things that you've spoken about that is a real priority for you is very much the focus on family now more than ever. So I'm curious, like how have you and what have you done during this pandemic to maintain the bonds and what have you learned about family and about priorities associated with your personal life?
Yes, and of course there's the inner nucleus of my wife and my kids, and together the 7 of us, we try to stay in touch through technology. I mean, it's one of those things that I probably find unfair in life, that eventually your kids have to live their own lives, I just think it's such a short window, and they're with you, and it's such a privilege. And so I miss them, and as you say, with COVID and all the lockdowns, it's very difficult. But of course, I also have an extended family. My siblings, they're all in the Philippines. I have family in the US, in other parts of the world. You have to just make sure that you're able to maximize available technology and stay in touch. But it isn't the same, right? Because a lot of human communication is also contingent on nonverbals. And even if I can see your face and you can hear me, it's just not the same. But you have to make the most of it because the alternatives are worse.
That's true. And one of the most interesting things, and we've seen this in previous episodes of Corona TV. In fact, there was an amazing exercise done that actually shows that what we're going through right now is quite intimate. We are within 4 feet of one another, virtually, but in terms of the proximity that we have to each other, and that is personal space. And so in many respects, now I know there's a lot of Zoom fatigue when you see people, this size on a screen, but what I've found as well firsthand is that when we actually have a conversation like this, it really does feel quite intimate, and that's a beautiful thing.
And it's important to me to have intimate conversations because I'm, although my job requires me to speak a lot to groups, large and small, it's very easy to be misunderstood as an extrovert, and I'm actually quite an introvert in the sense that I draw energy from smaller groups, more intimate, cozier conversations where I'm not having to compete with music or anything else. And there's a lot of meaning in life that requires genuine human connection, and I cherish that.
I'm convinced that I am what's called an extroverted introvert, and I will send you afterwards a link to a show where I have an extreme introvert. You saw it in the show credits, and it was just so fascinating to learn. In fact, one of the insights that came out of that interview is that public speaking and stage fright actually has nothing to do with being an extrovert or an introvert,
No.
which actually is good for people that consider themselves introverts and feel maybe that public speaking or giving presentations is something that maybe is too difficult or out of reach for them.
No, truth be told, each time I have to go and speak to a large group or even just to a small group, or even speak to you in this medium, I'm always very nervous. But of course, over time, you learn how to channel that into positive energy, into constructive energy, and you do it despite what you're feeling. So it's not the absence of, courage is not the absence of fear, right? It's doing things despite fear, and I think that's something that you just have to learn how to do.
Well,
but again, it's a privilege.
No, but you actually have reason to be nervous because we're gonna get into some embarrassing, fun facts about you, things that no one in the world knows, but we have uncovered them due to our crack squad of private investigators. So without further ado, this is not really a fun fact that I found out about you, but I keep on thinking of Aragon. And so I get that
a lot. I get a lot when I check into hotels.
So you really are, as I called you, the Filipino superhero, and we'll talk a little bit about superheroes lately. But as I told you, be afraid, be very afraid, but you don't have to be that afraid, because one thing that I did learn about you is that you are an obsessive. I didn't even know that there was something called SUP. Obsessive about stand-up paddleboarding, and you even have a dedicated Instagram page for it, which is over here. And I love the name, by the way, very creative. What's up at 50?
Yes, it's one of the things that I learned, and I acquired as a passion, is stand-up paddleboarding. Living in the beauty of Switzerland is that you have a lot of lakes that you can launch into in what is considered really a boat that you stand on. And I just learned how to not fall into the lake after a few practices, and now I'm just enjoying it. And it's also great for distancing, right? Because you're just alone typically in the lake, and easily the next person who may be paddleboarding or people on the boat are at least sort of 100 meters away from you.
It's actually funny when you apply that lens to certain activities. Like I used to think, so I sing, which I mean I like singing. So I sing is probably a stretch, but I always used to think that singing was a creative right brain activity, and it actually isn't. It's actually quite left brain. Because if you think about it, what you're doing is there are notes on a page. I mean, there's a way to sing, on key, in tune. Yes, you can be creative, but generally it's actually quite a left brain thing. And it's interesting you applying, in a way, the introvert extrovert lens to SUP, right? To stand-up paddleboarding.
Oh yeah, I was extremely nervous. Not so much that I fall into the water, but that I fall into the water in plain sight of everyone. so I consider that quite embarrassing. But I think I get your point about singing. I think though that the emotional brain is the one that propels you to sing, even when you're off key. So even if every logic in your brain tells you you can't sing, mate, the passion in you for music, for singing, propels you, and I think that's great.
Well, I mean, God knows that a lot of people that sing off key and don't know that they're singing off key, and that's another story for another day. But it's funny because even on this conversation about standing out and almost in a bad way in a crowd, we push ourselves to try and get out of our comfort zone, singing in front of people. One thing that I also found out about you is that you are a frustrated stand-up or improv comedian and talk show host. So I will not ask you to give us some improv today.
Please don't.
But I can tell you that you're closer to the talk show host thing than you believe, because you're on my show. And I guess I became a talk show host without any knowledge, without any experience, and clearly without any talent as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of stuff for my friends and their weddings and everything, but it helps that you're familiar with the people you're roasting, shall we say.
Well, maybe another day when we see each other in real life or on a Zoom, you can, let's put it this way, if you ever have new material and you want to test it out on me or on our Zoom after show, we have an amazing Zoom after show. And by the way, if you want to join us and join Dean, all you got to do is go to bit.ly/CoronaTV after show afterwards, and we'll hang out a little bit. And who knows, maybe he'll treat us to some of his stand-up. I'm just kidding. You don't have to. You don't have to at all. Dean, one more thing about you, which is, you spoke about this idea of being unapologetically Filipino, and in finding out a little bit about your background and your family's background, in the years after the war. I wanted to ask you, how has your being, coming from the Philippines, your family's history, how is that combined to inform, to shape, to guide, and inspire you to be the man you are, and ultimately the leader you are in the workplace as well?
When you grow up in a country like the Philippines, especially in the 1970s, you inescapably acquire what I would call a colonial mentality. And we were colonized by the Spanish for almost 400 years, and then by the Americans, and then we were occupied by the Japanese during World War II. But you eventually figure out that you're not as inferior as you think you are. But when I was growing up, we always looked out to the West as better. They were more intelligent, more accomplished. But you learn how to dream of a bigger and better life. And you may not know how to get there, but passion in your mind, in your heart, propels you, energizes you. And I remember when I was 12, there was this thing about a yearbook, in the elementary, and you're supposed to quote someone famous. And I said to my teacher, "Is it possible to quote myself?" And my teacher said, "But you're not famous." I said, "Okay, then I'll just have to put in anonymous." And I remember it and use it to this day, which is the line that I coined was, "The heart leads the mind to unthinkable places." And And maybe back then I didn't really quite understand what it meant, but boy, do I know what it means now, because if I look on the journey that it's been and the journey that I'm looking forward to still taking, I invest myself fully in things that I do. And sometimes it's also the source of bane, as much as it is a source of boon, because sometimes you get hurt. Right? Sometimes things don't go your way and it affects you. People always tell you, well, don't take it so personally. But I always take it personally, because I always invest my whole person into everything that I do. And the reason I do that has a lot to do with how I grew up. I knew that if I didn't put my whole heart into it, I could never be better. I could never be best. I could never be world class. And I don't know about you, Joseph. I don't know many people who are world class in something that they don't love. And I think when you do intersect what you're passionate about and what you're great at, then that's a really great intersection to be at. And I strive for that intersection whenever I can.
I don't think I've had a guest in 125 episodes that has given me that many golden nuggets in the space of 120 seconds. I mean it. I mean, like, first of all, I was like, this idea of you're not as inferior as you think you are. We were actually having a conversation yesterday with Brad Jakeman even about this idea of the definition of racism. And being a racist is the ability to believe that people are inferior to you. And I love this idea of rising up and recognizing. You look in the mirror, you look, and recognize the power that we have within. And then you segue to this idea of letting the heart lead the mind. And I was like, that's a quote. I mean, so, I play a little game with my guests, which is guess the quote. And I got so carried away yesterday that I forgot to actually ask Brad who said this. Is that even? No, that's not even the right one. I can't even remember what the right one is. But here's your one. This is your one. Your one is, from the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the shadows shall spring. So do you know who said that?
I have zero idea who said that.
So I will give you a little clue. It was connected to one of the Photoshop images of a character that I thought you embodied the likeness of.
So something to do with the Lord of the Rings, Aragon.
So that would be J.R.R. Tolkien himself.
Yeah.
And the reason why I put this quote up for you is that, one of the things you'd spoken about, going back to your family, is this learning, I guess, that you got, which is the ability to rise up from the ashes, to recognize the period of growth and the period of positivity that came from 1945 to 1949, which was a difficult period for your grandparents and your parents. I think that there is an important parallel right now for thinking about where we are globally, locally, with respect to the economic conditions, with respect to COVID, being able to have the faith and the belief that things will get better and that we can come out of this stronger. How do you interpret this idea of the phoenix rising from the ashes based on what you've even learned personally and based on kind of where we are right now?
Yeah, I always remember the stories of my grandfather who was tortured during World War II, and it's the infamous death march in Bataan in the Philippines. And they were suffering economically. But then there were the years 1945 to 1949 after the war. And the reason why I think that it's important to recall some of that, and many countries were decimated as well, is that we need to channel the spirit of unity, healing, recovery, and rebuilding. This is, in my view, and I wish I were exaggerating. In my view, this is also very close to this generation's big struggle. It is, at least in my lifetime, what I've experienced as the biggest threat to lives and livelihood. And therefore, for me, we need to channel the same spirit. And I think that it's one thing to feel positive and hopeful. It's another thing to also match that with real collaboration, real coalition building, real, let's hold hands and do things so that we can help each other. This is a time for real servant leadership. And I think nothing less than that is required.
So how do we get there? One of the things that I've switched in my questioning is everybody talks about emerging better and emerging stronger and post-COVID or what comes next, and talk about servant leadership. What is the first step? What are some of the steps that we can do in order to prepare ourselves and take those steps to move forward together and leave behind a lot of the baggage maybe that we brought into this period?
I believe that small steps are necessary to make a big difference. I think that it's very easy to talk about big programs and big coalitions. I can only really control my own actions, and therefore, I think if each one of us takes the extra step, the extra sacrifice to help someone else, it will mean a lot. If you aggregate that over how many other millions of people, billions of people who do that. And I've seen many of that in display. I've seen many friends and neighbors and people who are complete strangers to another give that extra hand just out of selflessness. I don't know of anything in life that provides genuine joy and sense of fulfillment to one's heart, mind, and soul other than helping a fellow human being. That's genuine intrinsic joy versus the extrinsic rewards of things that you acquire or things that you accomplish. I certainly can recall in my life the joy that I have felt, a humbling sense of happiness when I have in my own small way helped someone else. And the good news is that it's also addictive. And therefore, there's every encouragement for you to keep on doing it. I'm a big believer that in both business and life, the only thing that is truly good is that which is repeatable. This is not an ephemeral social media post where I've posted my story and that's it. I think you just need to keep going because I believe in karma. I believe in paying things forward. I don't want to paint the picture that I'm always good and do that. I'm like everybody else. You stumble, but I really think that that's what we were meant to be in this world, and that's why I believe in the motto that I grew up with in my university, which is how to become a man for others, or a woman for others, or a person for someone else. And I think that's just something that I strive to be. I may never always get there, but I will never tire of trying.
And which university did you go to?
No, I went to the Ateneo de Manila University, which is run by the Jesuits in the Philippines, who are brilliant educators.
It's a beautiful statement, how to become a man or a human for others. There's so much again in there that I wish I could go into, but I'll just try and go back to one point. You said that which is truly good is repeatable.
Yes.
What did you mean? If you could expand a little bit on that, because on one hand, can you be truly good? I mean, there are genuine one-off moments that I'm sure could be good, but there's something bigger there, and I would love for you to just expand on that slightly.
I think moments of kindness, moments of generosity are good, by and in itself. I just think that if you want to go and do bigger good, I think you should keep on going, and I think you should find ways to to help people really pick themselves up. So, for instance, charities is virtuous, but at the same time, instead of just donating money, I mean, why not donate your own time and help others? Help them become more economically independent. The old sort of principle of help them, don't give them fish, but help them how to fish. And I think that requires a lot of thinking. It's not just an instinct. It's not just a gesture. I think you have to be methodical about helping, so that it becomes, in my view, in my personal view, I'm not trying to impose it on anyone else, a repeatable cycle of kindness and generosity.
But now you are a philosopher second to none. Most people, I would say, don't quit your day job, but you can quit your day job and just become a full-time philosopher, because there's a lot of there are a lot of really in all sincerity, some very, very meaty and deep and substantial things that you said. But I almost feel like, I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg with you. Something else that you've spoken about, which is, I know, very near and dear to your heart, is mental health. And in everything from a segue from not feeling inferior and rising up, but also sometimes people can beat us down, and sometimes life can beat us down. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the impact and the effect on our mental health right now, and mental health in general, but also attaching some of these, if we start to connect the dots and we talk about personal purpose versus professional purpose, how do we come together? How do we unite? And how do we help each other going through these very tough mental health challenges that we're going through right now?
Mental health is a serious issue. And I know that firsthand. I suffered clinical depression twice in my life. And that's why I am very happy to share my story, my journey, because the mistake I made the first time I went into clinical depression is I kept it from everyone. I was embarrassed. I considered it to be a confession of extreme weakness back then, which of course is very wrong. I was afraid of how I was going to be seen by my peers, by my family. And that was the biggest mistake I ever made, because by doing so, I did not seek proper help. And what I'm trying to do now is to really share my story, so that if someone is somehow touched by my story and is then encouraged to speak to someone else, then by the mere act of reaching out, then they might, it's already a sign of a step in the right direction. And which I didn't do the first time I suffered clinical depression, but which I did the second time, which completely accelerated my recovery. I'm also trying to normalize it by sharing my story, because it's an illness like anything else. There is a medical condition; it can be addressed, and you cannot just be told how to fight it and to be strong. I mean, you tell that to someone who's got a fever and an infection, fight the infection. You've got to treat it. And so I support programs like, It's Okay to Say I'm Not Okay, and both within the company and similar programs outside. So I lend my voice, I lend my story, in the hope that it could help someone, even if it's just one person, because I don't want that one person to commit the same mistake I made the first time, which is I didn't even tell my wife, and by the time I had to share it with other people, it was really too late. It had become such a severe problem. But I'm very thankful that I recovered. It took a lot of prayers and love from many people. But of course, I also had to do my part, and which is to seek help, and I was helped. So I hope that if someone is out there who's thinking about should I tell somebody else, I hope that you don't suffer alone.
I can only thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing with us, and you have already, there's no doubt. Joey says, vulnerability is strength. Thank you for being so strong, Dean. So, Chris Brogan is here. Chris is what I call a fellow streamie. He started his own streaming talk show, a brilliant show called The Backpack Show, and also having similar conversations as I am, really getting to know people. But I have to tell you that what I feel comes out of this, Dean, is something that you said, which is the more we talk, the more we share, the more we open up, the healthier we become, or at least the better the chance that we have of being able to move to a better place or to leave behind a darker place. It is, and there's so many stereotypes of even men, right? Holding it in, keeping it from others, because these are old-fashioned stereotypes of how a man should behave, or how anyone should behave, how a business professional should behave. That's why something that you said that really struck me is there is a difference between, we hear a lot of conversation about purpose, but you call it personal purpose. And you have to align your personal purpose with a professional purpose.
Yes.
If you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, as a marketeer, and one of the things that I pursued, and one of the reasons I joined Shell was to try and work out, to refresh the brand purpose of Shell. And it would be not dissimilar to figuring out the brand purpose for whatever brand that you're handling in whichever company you work in. But if you remember what I said earlier, it needs to be personal, right? So you also have your own sense of personal purpose. When you humanize a brand through, for instance, acquiring a sense of purpose, articulating a sense of purpose, and more than articulating a sense of purpose, actually pursuing the fulfillment of such a purpose, how does your own personal purpose intersect with that? How does it overlay against that? Because if there's an incongruence between your personal purpose and your organizational or your brand's purpose, you're not going to find fulfillment. And therefore, it's important, for instance, not just for people who you might say should buy into the brand, but it starts at home. It starts with your own team. It starts with your own company, your own organization. How do you make sure that the people are actually lining up their sense of personal purpose with that of the organization or the brand? Because when they do match up, and when they're not at the very least inconsistent with each other, that's very powerful. Because then you're able to rally the team, energize everyone, make sure that they're clear on what they have to achieve. And that's infectious as well. That can only show and reflect itself in what you do, in the work that you accomplish, in the products and the services that you provide, in the brand that you're advertising. It becomes a powerful source of authentic motivation. And that's why I say it's infectious. But it has to be genuine.
Yeah, I mean, you can't fake authenticity, and so much that we've seen from brands in the past is this ability to. I remember something that I used to enjoying the conversation when I used to give keynotes on the subject, and it was a long time ago. Moved on to different subjects, but it always stays with me. I always refer to, by the way, join the conversation as, every child, you love them all equally but differently. This book I loved for so many reasons. I don't think many people loved it as much as they should have, but I loved it because of all these little, insights that came out, like this idea of conversation between two or more sides, not two more people. But one of the things is I said, look, I don't want to be friends with a can of Coke. I don't want to be friends with a Nike sneaker. I don't want to be friends with a gas pump. But yet they all keep on trying to friend me on Facebook. It's like, I don't want to be friends with a can. I want to be friends with the people that designed the can, that made the can, that marketed the can. I want to be connected with the humans behind the brand. That to me is humanization of a brand.
I agree.
So I should carry on, because I'll ask you something else afterwards.
No, why don't you ask me the question? Because maybe that's the question I was looking for.
Well, I was actually just going to ask you, like, we had this amazing community show last week where I had 9 previous guests, which you are now automatically invited to because you're a previous guest. But Jan Zlotnik actually asked the question. He asked everybody to go around and define what brand meant to them. Now, listen, you're the brand guy. So, you are the definitive authority by definition. But what is your definition of brand?
I won't give you the textbook definition.
I don't want that.
It's going to bore the audience. And also, it doesn't work anyway. So for me, it's always been about finding the personification of that brand that I can connect with as if it were a fellow human being. It's very akin to what you said about, you want to connect with the human, not with a piece of product or a piece of packaging. So for me, a brand is just another way of connecting with human beings who actually buy into that brand by being by acquiring and demonstrating human qualities and features. It will never be fully human, of course, but that needs to be embodied in how it comes across. And when that connection works, then people will engage with the brand. People will have a relationship with the brand, because humans are hardwired to find human aspects in things. That's how we respond to things. So the brands that are very successful in that are the ones that are able to make that connection. And you can do it not just through advertising. You can do it in a lot of the semiotics of the brand, the symbols, the signs, the way the products come across, the sounds of the brand. There's a lot of ways by which through the sensorials of the brand's offer, it can really connect or not. Right? So, and I think, and again, it needs to stay true to your character as a brand. You can't be something else that you're not. You'll be found out quite easily, and it will show. And so the best version to pursue is your own version.
I love the fact that I have the evolution of the Shell logo, but it really does come back to origins, and it's like it's almost going back to superheroes, the analogy, which we'll get to in a moment. There's always an origin story. How did Batman become Batman? How did Spider-Man become Spider-Man? How did Shell become Shell? And with your company and with your brand, one thing that never changes is a shell. What is the significance of the shell? The actual shell.
It's a historical fact that Royal Dutch Shell is a union of the Royal Dutch Company of the Netherlands and the Shell Trading Company of the United Kingdom. And so Shell, the reason it was called Shell was one of the things they used to trade in is seashells. And
it's amazing.
Therefore, that stuck, right? So, just like there are many products with interesting origins, and that's why for me, if I can go a little bit marketing geeky here,
you can when we get to 15 minutes from the end.
The reason why brands have to transcend the form and function of the products that they are offering is because you never know whether you may have to pivot to something else, to another set of products, another set of offers, another set of technologies. And therefore, if the brand is only attached to a certain form and function, then the enduring nature of that brand or business may be shorter than one thinks. So you need to invest both in what your customers or your consumers are buying as products, services, but equally what you want the brand to be bought to stand for, so that they can buy into it.
Well, that's what you said, and that's what I loved, right? You said it's buying, but also buying into.
Yes, very big difference.
And the two need to coexist, right? Because one is a financial reason to keep the lights on, and a utility, but the other one is something that transcends, which is the ability to align, to connect, to unify, as you say, the personification of the values, the beliefs, the ideals, the morals, the practices and in some cases the history and the heritage. And I think the reason why I showed some of that earlier is every brand needs its own origin story. Every brand needs something that is, immutable, that will never change. And then brands need stuff that continues to change and evolve. And that's why I love the stuff that I was reading about what you have been bringing, and you've sold this through to the whole company, this idea of a more and cleaner energy solutions, and this whole concept of B2H, business to humans. You don't hear that a lot, B2H. It's not just a tagline, I assume.
No, it's not even a tagline. It's just a belief. Right? It's a necessary principle. Because again, to your point about not wanting to have a relationship with a product per se, we sometimes have these acronyms in business, like B2B, business to business, business to consumer, business to employees, or B2B to C. And I just felt, well, whatever that business may be, I mean, there are always businesses that involve humans. So there's B2H, or together with the ANA, we were working on another expression of B4H, which is brands for humans. There's always a human involved, but sometimes we pretend that they're not humans. We sometimes pretend, for instance, that the humans we deal with are 24/7 the commercial persona that are in front of us, but they're not, right? So they have a life. They're a parent, they're a spouse, they're a sibling. They have passions in life, but we somehow sometimes game it as if they're just in the game that we've defined, and we forget that we're far more nuanced and far more complex, and thank God, right, that we're richer for it. But brands should respect that and respond to that.
I want to touch on one more of the world according to Dean, the brand guy, which I really love. And it's this whole concept of, we spoke about servant leadership, but there's another that, now we get into our X-Men analogy. There's something else that you've, pioneered, which you actually call the X-Men approach. And it's an approach that you use with respect to leadership and with respect to the idea of teams. I wonder if you could just chat briefly about what that means and the analogy, but also the principles and the practices.
Well, for full disclosure, I was a big comic book collector and a big fan of the X-Men.
Me too. Me too.
Especially the original X-Men stories in the early '60s. I think, and then because of that, being such a big fan of superheroes, big fan of the MCU. Imagine, I would think the heroes that you just read in a two-dimensional comic book coming to life in movies. I was transported to my youth. I cried in the Avengers Endgame.
Well, hopefully not. Really, the second one as well. Well, the second one there was some loss.
Yeah, I mean the first and the second. But for me, I've always been intrigued by how do you form very powerful teams, very effective teams, very teams that have the real spirit of solidarity. I have your back and I know you have mine. And my approach has always been about curating the team to make sure that they have very different superpowers. I'm the sort of leader who I never pretend that I have all the answers, and I try to surround myself with people who have powers that I don't have. Why? Because I believe that the most effective teams are the ones who have completing abilities versus competing abilities. That's normally where unhealthy tension comes out. When you're trying to compete against each other instead of uniting and competing with the competitors outside of your team, outside in the marketplace, the competitors you have in your business or for your brand. And so that's been the philosophy I've always had, that, and the rule is in the team, in the teams that I lead, we all respect each other's superpower, one. B, we seek to have formations where, depending on the brief or the objective, we have different sorts of formations, right? So, and the third one is no one should pretend that they have someone else's superpower. So because then that defeats the notion of interdependence. I need to depend on you for the power that I don't have, because you literally complete me and we complete each other. And therefore, I love this whole notion of completing abilities versus very unhealthy competing abilities.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean.
That's another favorite movie of mine, Jerry Maguire.
Which is it's amazing to talk to and I don't want to use the word like-minded. Maybe I should say what I'm going to say. It's wonderful to talk to like-hearted people. How about that? We are like-hearted. Yeah, maybe we're love-hearted, but like-hearted. Like we lead with the heart, and that quote about the heart informing the head was just terrific. So let's segue to the final part of our conversation together, which is the ANA part. And I'm very grateful to the ANA, because without the ANA, I wouldn't have met you. And my audience and our community, I should say, wouldn't have had the opportunity to get to know you. And of course, if you want to hang out with us for a brief while, you can do that by just typing in bit.ly/CoronaTV aftershow in about 9 or 10 minutes. But Dean, you're going to be giving a keynote at the ANA, and obviously for people that are still looking to register, that don't want a comp, I mean, I would take the comp over paying, but you should pay for the ANA, because they're bringing people like Dean to talk to you. But Dean, your keynote is on Friday, October 23rd at 10:49 a.m. Do not be late. And it's called Humanized Data-led Creativity. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. And then I know that there are some provocations that you may share with us. And I think each provocation is meatier than the preceding one.
No, I just thought it was appropriate to tackle sometimes the most difficult conversations I've been having, certainly with some of my colleagues and some of the people I respect in the industry, about what is the real role of data in effectiveness or creativity in our craft. And I keep on tripping over things like the modern marketer needs to be a data scientist, and I couldn't disagree more. And I outline in the book, in the chapter for which I contributed, which I wrote as a contribution to the book, Build Brilliant Brands, is where I really argue about why you can be informed by data, but you certainly cannot be led by it. You need to be led by real human insights. And I think it's very easy to get inundated by the amount and the abundance, the wealth of data, which is good, but is never enough. You need to go and dig for those human insights, those deep psychological levers. Because if you don't understand those levers, then you would be almost like responding to the symptoms that you see, to the outer signals, and they don't really make you fully understand not just the needs that you understand, that you know and you hear about or you have experienced, but the unarticulated needs or the unarticulated desires. And therefore, I believe that if you humanize the data by distilling the core insights, the core human insights, you will find the human beings underneath the data. And then you will have far richer value propositions, campaigns, innovations, if you do that.
So is it possible that we're going to start within Shell now, start to see the rise of the data humanist, according to Jen?
Well, I would say the Data Alchemist, which is how I put it. So again, in a purely marketing sense, it's about really looking for those insights and then determining which of those insights are core, because not every insight is core. Not every insight is the insight that you need to respond to. And then that's half the battle won. The other half to complete.
Well, before you go into that, by the way,
sure.
What I do love about the data alchemist versus the data scientist, it almost seems that, data and science. Again, we're playing on the same side of the brain. We're playing left and left. But Data Alchemist or Jan's Data Humanist, what we're doing is we're demonstrating a left brain, right brain, maybe partnership, and that's why Data Alchemist.
It's a whole brain. It's a whole brain approach, which is why it becomes more effective.
So I'd love you to touch on the other two provocations.
Sure, but just to complete the point. So one thing is to unearth the insights, but it's not enough, right? You still have to respond to it, and that's where the alchemy bit part kicks in, which is just like the fictional alchemy of converting things to gold. You still have to convert you have to respond to the insights by coming up with golden propositions,
right?
And then you're able to really match, because even if you have the right insight, if you're not able to respond to it, then it means it will amount to nothing.
All right, so provocation 1, there's a lot of big data, but not enough deep data.
Yes, there's not enough insights, and therefore, data signal, an observation, a trend, a pattern, that's not an insight. So the way I define a real insight is it's the answer to the question why that you have to ask at least 7 times or however many times until you get to those deep levers.
The 5 whys, right? You have to answer why.
Yeah. But also or why not? But also another way of defining an insight is it's the question for which your answer is the best. Does that make sense?
I'm thinking about it. I'm going to follow it up with 5 whys. But I love that definition.
Yeah, because often you already have the answer, but as a marketeer, what is the question for which the answer that you have, a product, an offer, a campaign, is the best. So if you depend on that question, then you're able to set up your answer in the best possible way.
Well, let's go to that third provocation, right? Which is what you've been alluding to, which is most of what we actually call insights are not actual insights, but are just observations or even fake. What is a fake insight? Because I love it. You've not only told us to rethink the way we think of data, not only in terms of bringing left and right brain together, stopping, providing quality to match the quantity. And now you're saying, and by the way, everything you're doing might not even be accurate or even real.
Well, I don't know what the experience of others may be, but I've encountered some very bright people who sometimes are too bright, that when I look at some of the briefs, the insights that they've articulated are not really the insights coming from the consumers or their stakeholders. It's the wishful thinking of the marketing folks in a way that sets up their answer. Of course, when I say you have to find the question for which your answer is the best, I meant real questions, not questions that just match your thinking or your bias. That's what I consider as a fake insight. It's the wishfulness or it's almost like a setup of a setup by the brand manager or the marketing manager. Because then who are you fooling, right? Yourself, the company, the business, consumer. It's not going to work. No amount of media money is going to work.
We've had a number of common themes, and that's been one about intrigue, curiosity, asking the right questions, coming up with golden questions. Even recognizing that. Andrew Davis said, find a question that Google doesn't know the answer to. There was another one that I thought was so interesting in terms of subject matter expertise. But one of the best, and another one that came out was this idea of, I said, I will never, ever tell people again, when I give a presentation, they ask a question, that's a really good question, for a number of reasons. One is, why intimidate the people to the left and right of them? And 2, maybe it's not really a good question either. So now what I'll only do is I'll go, you know what? I've never been asked that question before. It's the only thing I will do to qualify the question.
Because you effectively reposition others' questions as not as good.
Tom, I'm going to give Tom, who is watching right now on Facebook. He said, our problem is that wishful thinking rules the world. Dean's so right. We need to call it out. Dean, you don't need to call out anything more except maybe the URL for people to join us in our little small, intimate, cathartic after show. And that you don't even have to give the URL either. I will. It's bit.ly/CoronaTV after show. We're going to hang out for just under 25 minutes or so. But if you want to see Dean at the ANA, you can go and register, ana.net/masters2020. Of course, you subscribe to the show. You can get a comp. There are just 2 or 3 of them left. I would be only too happy to give them to you. Dean, as I give you the final word, because I always want my guests to have the final word, I will flash a few ways that people can connect with you, and in particular find out about the book, Facebook's book that you contributed to. But Dean, the final words are yours, my friend.
Hey, Joseph, thanks a lot for giving me the time, and I hope I was remotely interesting and offered a few insights and indeed some provocations. I think to my fellow marketeers who are listening, it's a great time to be a marketeer because you can really serve, not just sell. And I invite you to always look for the humans, look out for the humans in our business. They are the ones who provide us the business. You know, the root word of customer, for instance, is custom. And when I say repeatable, you want to really encourage them to have the custom to keep on coming back. But they won't come back unless we truly serve them and enable their aspirations in life. And that's the challenge and the opportunity for all of us in marketing.
Love that final word. And I lied about Tom having the final word. I lied about you having the final word. The final word always goes to my friend Chuck.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you go. I will see you guys tomorrow.
I'm also a fan of Chuck Norris, so thank you for that.
Who isn't?
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.